Well, good morning, everybody. This is Bill Cloud, and this is On This Day. Thanks for joining us today. It's the 27th day of Adar, and it was on this day in 1979 that Menachem Begin of Israel and Anwar Sadat of Egypt signed the peace treaty between their respective countries that came about from the Camp David peace accords. Since that time, Israel has enjoyed over 3 decades of peace with Egypt, and I say that word peace kind of tongue-in-cheek, but that's the official status. Yet, when considering that Egypt represents the oppression of Israel and the travail by which the Creator brought forth His people Israel, one wonders if peace is the appropriate word when considering Egyptian and Israeli relations. Look at how God describes Egypt as it relates to the children of Israel in Deuteronomy chapter 4. But the Lord has taken you and brought you out of the iron furnace, out of Egypt, to be His people, an inheritance, as you are this day. So we see in this passage that Egypt is a furnace, and that furnace is intended to melt materials, that those materials then might be molded into something useful. His people had been in Egypt. They had assimilated to some degree into Egypt and Egyptian culture, and so they had been placed in this furnace to melt away all of the things that they picked up from Egypt and from the other nations so that they could come forth as His people. God called Israel my son. And so this is what Egypt is to Israel. It's proper to think that if there's going to be an Egypt, it's all the bad things that God wants to remove from His people. So is it proper to think then that there can be a true peace that exists between the two? Perhaps it might be better to think of it as a ceasefire. But if a ceasefire, that suggests that at some point in the future, that fire is going to be rekindled. Now, over the last several years, there have been a lot of things going on in the Middle East, Egypt included, and we see the rise and fall of different governments and different dictators and different despots. And there's a lot of things that are going on, things that we need to keep our eye on. And where Egypt is concerned, we really need to be looking at that because to the believer, the world is Egypt. It's the Creator's furnace that He uses to melt our will, our desires, so that you and I can be molded into something that is useful. Now, here's what He says about His plan to redeem His people. Behold, I have refined you, but not as silver. I have tested you in the furnace of affliction. For my own sake I will do it. For how should my name be profaned? And I will not give my glory to another. So it seems that He's saying that once again, He will use Egypt, if you will, the world as a furnace. And that furnace is intended to melt our desires and our will so that He can mold and shape us into vessels of honor. He wants to redeem us from the nations, but He has to have the nations to serve their purpose. Now, it also says that He's going to do this not because we're a great and wonderful people. He does this for His own name's sake. Where you and I as individuals are concerned, we shouldn't delude ourselves into thinking that we can make peace with Egypt, that is the world, without or within. We can't make peace with our carnal nature. At best, all we can hope to accomplish is a ceasefire. But just as soon as we let our guard down, that is with the world or with our carnal nature that wants to rise up, when we let our guard down, that enemy is going to try to rise up and conquer us. That is, conquer the spirit man. And so there's only one way that we can be assured of true peace, and that is to crucify our flesh, to crucify the Egypt that's in us every day, and to stand guard against those things that would come from external forces that would try to influence us, to try to seduce us into thinking the way that Egypt thinks. I've been tested in this regard and have once again been reminded how important it is to crucify the flesh. I realize that there are things about my life that, well, it's going to take a furnace of affliction to purge those things from me. In the meantime, we should not settle for a ceasefire. We need to determine within ourselves to kill that old man today. Then we'll get up tomorrow and we're going to have to crucify him again, and the next day, and the day after that. And the point of all of this, Again, God's people can't truly make peace with Egypt. The only true peace is going to come when the Prince of Peace comes to rule and reign. And so, let that begin today in our hearts. May he be enthroned in our lives. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you again tomorrow. Shalom.
Like what you're hearing? Become a Bill Cloud Premium Partner to watch or listen to hundreds of hours of teachings and resources on demand. Go to BillCloud.com/subscribe to start watching today.